But yeah, as far as the like the beta goes, like I mean, there's a lot of issues, I guess. I mean, I guess it really depends on how you want to look at it, right? But I mostly look at it as like a rough sketch of something, right? I mean, you want it to be closer than rough sketch since it's almost time to like release the game. Like as far as the dev cycle goes, there's only 2 months left, right? So not even really, because like when they put it to print, it's usually done way before that. So was that it? Just for that one boss? Oh, what's up, Power? Do I want this? What's it do? 28% increased crit chance against injured enemies while you're healthy. Also, let me see the the cast speed. That is so slow. Yeah, I'm not a fan of crossbows. All right, back to this. Um, but yeah, so like I mean, yeah, they need to be more fleshed out for sure. But as it is right now, I think there's a like the framework of the game is really good. You know, because that's usually what I look at when I play games. Like I mean, the reason why I like PoE is because the framework is Diablo 2, right? I mean, I mentioned this several times, but I think like PoE is like the final form of Diablo 2. What happened there? Oh, is servers down? Oh, I can't leave the dungeon? That was weird. That was a weird bug. Just spit me right back into the dungeon. Oh, servers might be down. Oh, yeah, servers are down. Okay, well, GG then. It was fun while it lasted. Alright, I can give you my opinion now instead of like trying to play. Um, but yeah, so how late were they? They were late 30 minutes, huh? To actually shutting down the servers. I actually thought they forgot about daylight savings time or something. I thought I had a full hour. But yeah, as far as like the skeletal structure of it, I like what I see. I like the more deliberate pace of the combat. I like that trash mobs have like high possibility of killing you if you're not paying attention. Like even like imps and stuff like that. Like CC is a really important thing in this game as well. Like I think that's pretty cool. Like so like the interplay between breaking out of CC, like the how you engage with CC, is pretty important, right? So how you gear out and how you do your loadout as well, I think is very important. The combat is fun. I find it very fun actually. Like all the classes, like the barbarian, like despite the fact that I feel like he's trash tier compared to like the other classes, I still had so much fun with it, you know? And that's a testament to like the combat design, right? So it feels meaningful, it feels impactful, you know, like I already mentioned like the sound stuff, like I think the sound design is really good. The sound impact, like you know, the nostalgic sounds with the coins dropping, of course that's nice too, but just like everything feels weighty, right? Like one of the criticisms I have of Final Fantasy 14 is I feel the sound design is weak. I feel the music is good, but I feel the sound design is weak. So a lot of the abilities that like you see like crazy shit going on screen, like you know light effects everywhere, you know like fireworks going off, but like the sound accompanied with it doesn't quite fit. So like the moves don't feel impactful. It doesn't feel weighty. Like another game that I feel like does sound design pretty well is like Monster Hunter, right? Like it's more cartoony in its sound design, so it's not like 343 Studios where they do like Halo sound effects, where like a little bit more realistic, right? But either way, it doesn't have to be like, because I feel like sometimes people confuse sound design with like, okay, it sounds more realistic. That's not what I mean. I'm like, does it have that kind of conveyance of meaning, right? So like if you hear certain things, like is it easily associable with certain things, like okay, what's happening on screen, like okay, does it give impact to the move, right? You know, like this, like I mean that definitely sounds like arrow, right? Like this, I mean that sounds dope. I mean listen to the reverb at the end of it, go at the end, you know, when you're like done shooting it, right? It's almost like they use like storm cloud thunder reverb like mixed into the sound design. So that's also sound cue to let you know, oh yeah, you're out of mana. It's not just like she's saying, oh I'm out of energy. Like you can tell from stuff like that. That's important, these type of things, right? So like sound design I think is really strong in this game. I think the animations are pretty good. They're fluid and nice. Like I use them as a bad example all the time, but like NetherRealm Studios, they do like a kind of, you know, like a jank job with animation. So like if you look at the characters, they're doing things that are like not possible with physics, with the human anatomy, you know? So it's almost comical, right? They're like a meme for a reason at this point. So like even though the characters look cool, if they move really weird and jank, then it becomes comical, right? Unintentionally, which I'm a fan of as well, but only because it's funny. It's not meant to be though. You know what I mean? If they're trying to be funny, or if they're trying to be serious and it becomes funny, that's a failure on their part. You know. But it doesn't negate the possibility of enjoyment as a gamer, right? Because if you're finding it funny, then that's fun, right? But yeah, so sound design is cool. Like I mentioned several times, like the music in this game, I think is very strong. Even right now, listen to this ambient music, right? There's really not much going on. It's just only coloring the mood of the game, right? Like how it is like in this dungeon or cavern, right? Like you hear some like low end, like kind of like synth organ type stuff with like tons of reverbs on industrial type strings, right? So this type of stuff, like I mean, there's lots of games that do ambient music all the time, like Horizon Zero Dawn, like Uncharted, like games where you're just like wandering around in the wilderness. They're not gonna always have like a theme music blasting, right? It's not like a Nintendo game where you're like, okay, this is like level one of the Super Mario World, where the you know, it's like, I mean, that's cool too, right? I mean, it's nice to have like actual music, but when you're doing ambient music like this, it's really hard to make it good. And I feel like they do it really well here. So sound, hats off, right? Sound department, music department, hats off. Um, like combat, I think is pretty good. There's things that they can make better, of course, but that comes down to like balancing, you know. I think that it's totally fine the way it is right now, because they have a lot of potential for interesting mechanics, interactions with stuff like well, less so with the gear that she has on right now, but like, you know, with my barbarian, for example, like it really changed the way the whirlwind build works, because you know you summon the homies, it procs like on your whirlwind, so you get an additional guy doing damage with you, and then it get, you know, the bubble that procs from defensive where you become immune. It really changes like how you're able to play certain specs. So even if specs are not viable beforehand, it becomes something that's very viable later on, and also uniquely your own in a way, because you're like, okay, I want this loadout, I want this skill combination along with this kind of gear combination to give me that special kind of sauce, you know, my own particular, like, you know, spin on this build, right? um, so in that sense, it doesn't have the freedom as much of like Path of Exile to be like, okay, I start as a rogue, but I'm actually psych, you know, fake you out, I'm actually a whirlwind barbarian, you know, or I might start off as like a, you know, whatever, like assassin or something, but it turns out I'm actually like a bow character. Like you can do whatever you want in PoE, so there's a lot of freedom. So you don't have that sort of freedom, that genre of freedom, but within the archetypes and within like the pathways they have for you, you can still customize and cater to something very personal as well. So I think that's very cool. Um, now, you know, I'm talking about the positives and like things that they can change, because I'm looking at it as like I said, like a rough sketch where like they can get more finer lines, they can get more detailed stuff as they're, you know, coming upon a picture that they want to like sell to the customer, right? That comes with patches, that comes with different seasons, right? They can change that, but the bones in there I think are good. Now, as to like specific problems, like I feel like their end game is still not there yet, right? Because they have tons of these maps, like different type of maps, but they're like palette swaps, right? So if you look here, they got like this is like whatever, like swamp green cavern zone or some shit, right? But ultimately it's still like, yeah, you go whatever, you know, like you go and kill the trash mobs and fight the boss and that's it, right? I mean, same thing can be said about Path of Exile, right? They have a lot of different map tiles that are different, but ultimately it's the same thing. But the difference is in Path of Exile you have stuff like tower defense options, or you have like that exploding like dynamite TNT thing where you know, set up traps and do whatever different things. There's a lot of things that's there that changes the actual encounter. There's like heists, like, you know, um, granted they don't have to reveal all their cards because this is only beta, right? And maybe they do have some additional cool things in mind, right? If I consider the world boss encounter, that's cool, right? The social interaction, like that kind of like meanders into your field of view and then meanders out of your view. Like I love that, right? Where you don't have to sit there and be like, all right, I'm looking for a group, let me find a group, let me, you know, do searching for a group, like, and wait, you know, you don't have to do that shit. You're just doing your solo shit, and then you run across world events, you could join up if you want to, and you don't have to sit there and be like, all right, let me party up, you know. There's, in my entire playtime, there's only one time someone specifically took their time to try and invite me to a party. Now I didn't accept the party just because like I was like, we don't need to, right? Because we're sharing the XP, we're sharing the loot, we're helping one another out. Our buffs help one another. So if I do like a shout with my barbarian, everybody was getting that, you know. So I love that, right? And you don't necessarily have to sit there and like, okay, you know, be like, oh, hello, you know, like my name is, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to type. Um, so it's enough to just, you know, play without. So if you're on console or something, you're playing on controller, like this is enough to be like, hey,
Thank you.
you know, that's enough. Like you don't have to do anything crazy. So I like that as well. I like the way they're doing that because I think this game needs to be where everything should be soloable, um, with the exception of, I guess, world boss, right? uh, and it should be as little friction as possible when you do need to group up. Like world boss, again, like I didn't need to search for a group, I didn't need to go to Discord, set up a time with people being like, hey, you know, like let's make that connection, here's my IP address, like, you know, why don't you log in and do this shit. Like you want no friction there, so that kind of stuff's well done as well. But again, you know, going back, you know, these pilot swaps to these maps, you know, they're talking about there's like whatever, like thousands of dungeons. That might be true, like if you use like random generator to do different tiles and like just, you know, use AI to like do different shapes and be like, all right, this is different. This square is different from a map that's like a circle, or that's different because this one is like serpentine, you know, or whatever. I feel like that doesn't count, right? That's not like a different map. It's just like a palette swap. So they really need to work on the actual experience of like, okay, what's the hamster wheel gonna do? What's the end game? Like, what additional things do they have? You know, this type of stuff. So if they can do that, I think that'll be fantastic, right? Another thing, criticism that I have is Chat mentioned it a couple streams ago, where if you look at these legendaries, they're just like a higher tier of rares, right? So if there's like blues, and then there's yellows for rares, and then there's legendaries. Um, these legendaries are just like higher tiers of rares where they're still also completely randomized. So there's no sense of like, oh, I got a Stone of Jordan, or I got a SOJ, or I got like whatever, Ice Blink, you know, like where you're like, I'm gunning specifically for that unique to make my build viable. You know, there's less of that. So there's pros and cons to that, but I think there's more cons. Unless they have like a tier above this where it's like, you know, specific unique, you know, where it has like most of the stats being fixed, right? Where it's just like, okay, Ice Blink is Ice Blink, Stone of Jordan is Stone of Jordan. However, it might have like a range of a roll where it's like, okay, you can get 5 strength to like a 10 strength roll. So if it's good roll, maybe you get 10. So if you're trying to min-max it, you can go for like the most optimal thing, that kind of thing. But this stuff where it's just like, you'll say Needle Flare, Bone Gauntlet of whatever, protection of whatever, and then like these special effects that you see starred, where it says thorn damage dealt is whatever, these things completely change. So it gives like less meaning to it being like a legendary, I feel, where it's just like, well, this can be anything really. This for example, this bone weave armor has like the dark shroud thing, and now I have another one right here. So if you look at it, let's just compare, right? Oh, actually, I guess it's not the same. I was just looking at the icon. Oh no, it is the same. Bone weave. They're both bone weave armor, but one of them is shrouding, the other one's frostbitten. So if you look at the stats, the first line is like 3% damage. The other one's like 2.5 total armor. That's completely different. Next one is like resistance, right, for lightning, and then on the right is poison damage. Again, completely different. But if you look at all the stats, they're all completely different. You see, and like I'm not against like the star portion where it says star and you get that dark shroud on the left, and on the right like chilled. Like when I saw that chilled and I saw grenade skill have chance to equal your double your critical strike or whatever, and to instantly freeze the target, I'm like, that will synergize super well with this, where you get cow traps now deal cold damage and chills the enemy. I'm like, yeah, and so it gets your creative juices flowing. I'm like, oh, I can make something happen. Like in the same way with my barbarian, like I was able to make like that whirlwind build like super fun but I mean it took all the way to beating the world boss and getting max level and farming like the hardest zone to get to that point. And even then he's mediocre because he still couldn't beat that area to clear the zone that my sorceress was able to do at like 17, you know. And even that 17 argument can be you know, you can be like, well, you know, the mobs scale to your level, which is true. So in that area, they're always +2 level to whatever level you are. So if you're max level, then they're, you know, higher level than you by 2. And if you're 17, they're going to be level 19. But even so, the point is, like, the challenge was like, you know, I wasn't sweating bullets, you know, being like maximum try hard, you know, like trying to survive like I was on my barbarian versus my sorceress, where I was just like easy casual mode, sipping some cappuccino on the side, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, just dunking on these fools. without that effort. So that's a balance issue, and not like between those two specs in particular is a balance issue between melee and ranged classes. But that's something they can look at, right? So like I'm not as concerned there. But let's see what else. Yeah, I mean, there's like technical issues that need to work on, like the V cache or VRAM being saturated, and when it gets saturated, your frames tank super hard, right? So it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher. So like I even saw posts of people like that has like, you know, top tier graphics card with like 24 gigs of VRAM. So we're talking like 4090s and shit, and that gets saturated, and then your game runs like shit, right? So you're like running around with like, you know, frame drops constantly and stutters constantly, where your frames drop to like 10 frames per second or single digits all the time. And the only way to purge it is to go into like options, go into graphics, and then go, where is it? Where is it? Oh, here it is, texture. So it defaults to medium, right? You know, you change it to low and then save it so it purges your VRAM, and then change it back to whatever it was, and then you'll get less lag. But then they'll keep building up over and over. So these type of technical issues, these are bugs they can fix. So, you know, I'm not as concerned about that, but that is certainly a valid criticism. Like the social aspects, the co-op, like, you know, guilds, I didn't do any of that stuff, so I don't know about that stuff, so I don't have comments on that. Like only at the very end was I able to check out the cosmetic. Like here, you know, she's like cosmeticed up, so you'll see like these little hide transmog. Oh, they even call it transmog? Okay, so this is definitely taken from like Final Fantasy, huh? Sorry about all the noise in the background. There's like a dump truck like doing some work in the background right there. Like transforming into like Megatron in the background. It's like, damn, it's so loud. But yeah, you know, but like again, going back to the overall summary, like I was just talking about some parts that I was thinking about, you know, like they need to work on like the loot thing potentially to make it more interesting, because you want it to be where one, it's not dropping like candy, first of all, and you don't want it to be, but you want it to be doled out properly. Like you want to give good pacing to the breadcrumbs, right? Because if it's so rare that it never drops, people are going to be sad. But if it drops like candy and like all the legendaries are like, you know, it's like rare trash, that's what it becomes, then that's also not good, you know? So they need to work on that. Again, they need to work on the end game. One big concern I have is end game. Like what are they going to do to make this game interesting, right? And like give it long legs. And then the other one is monetization. These are the two big things, like end game and monetization. How are they going to do it? How aggressive are they going to be? Are they going to weaponize it the way they did in Diablo Immortal, where it becomes pay to win and it just feels like a trash experience? And then they also try and keep you as like some kind of psychological abused victim, where it's just like, all right, there's like these daily quests. Like I'm not pointing out daily quests in general, because like all games are, you know, they now have daily quests, so it's like whatever, you know. But where everything is geared around FOMO, so you're like, oh, you got to get it now, you know, or you're gonna miss out on everything, you know, that kind of thing, and using that weaponized to kind of, you know, squeeze money out of people. Now, like I'm not saying like you can't have timed events, like be like timed promo, like okay, like there's a promo with KFC, like if you do it, like you know, like your character will have a cosmetic where they're holding a double down, you know, like chicken sandwich, like whatever, you know, like that kind of shit doesn't matter, right? Like even if they're charging something that's cosmetic that costs like $100 for like a mount something, like yeah, I'm not gonna be happy with the fact that they're, you know, squeezing money like that out of the gamers, but I'm not gonna be like, oh, they shouldn't be allowed to do that, because as long as it doesn't affect the game performance or game balance and it's not pay to win, whatever, they can make money how they want. The way PoE does microtransactions, the way Final Fantasy 14 does microtransactions, I think for the most part is good. And that's how they should do it, not the way they do Diablo Immortal, you know? They're using the excuse of it being a mobile game to be like, yeah, it's a mobile game, obviously, right? And the people just accept the status quo. I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be that way. Just because it's a mobile game doesn't mean it should be shitty, you know? Like, we can hope and desire better things, a better world for people, you know? But anyway, what else? Yeah, as far as like the limitations of like how many abilities you can have, you know, like it used to be you had way more options because you had more slots, you know. I'm okay with that, like distilling it down so like each spec is like, you know, like yeah, of course a lot of the abilities seem cool, but so what if you can't have all of them, you know, like whatever, you know. I'm okay with that mostly. The only thing is I kind of feel I wish there was a specific thing for ultimate that's separate from this. But even that, I'm kind of like, I'm willing to concede that point. So I'm like, I guess, right? But if I had to change something about like, you know, how many skills are accessible to you, I wish there was like a ultimate, like a side thing, like ultimate here or where, it doesn't matter where they place it. That's a UI thing. But having access to ultimate that doesn't have to replace one of your things would be cool. But even if not, I'm kind of okay with it because they have gear that modify that kind of stuff. So if you get the correct gear, like, you know, it can just become like a regular skill and replace it. So you're not waiting like a full minute for the cooldown or whatever it is. Yeah, as far as like just off the top of my head, you know, my experiences with this and what I can think about, you know, because I have max character, tried out all the specs, tried out all the abilities of the barbarian. That's where I spent most of my time. You know, did the world boss encounter, you know, did the hardest content with that guy. And I felt like it was good because like he struggled the most, like having experienced the sorceress where it's like hella easy mode. Same thing with this character, also like easy mode, comparatively, right? I'm not saying these classes aren't challenging in their own ways, but you know, max level sorceress as well, and played it on veteran, right? So like it's I mean, it's not to say like, oh, I'm badass because I played it on veteran. It's more to say like, okay, that's like the whatever the most difficult setting that they had, so you can experience like the class under the most pressure that the game has to offer currently. So having done that, I do feel that barbarian is very weak, but that's a balancing thing that hopefully they can change maybe. But even if they don't, I'm still like, you know, I would still play the barbarian because I had fun, and that's what matters for me, like when I'm playing a game. So because I'm not trying to be esports and be like world #1 in something, you know, because I don't give a fuck about that kind of shit. So but yeah, so I think I'm trying to think of if there's anything else really that I want to talk about. No, really. I mean, like graphically, I think it's cool. Like minus like the bugs and stuff. Like, you know, I think the characters look cool. They animate well. Even like this, like feeling like it's a little pulled in. Like versus like, I mean, it probably isn't. Like I feel like scale wise of what you see on the screen is probably similar, but it feels, I don't know. But it is cool, like visual cues and stuff, you really do see what's going on the screen. It's not just like fireworks everywhere and you don't know what the hell's going on because it's just like too much particle effects going on, you know? There's clear delineation between you and the mobs and what's going on, like what kind of abilities they're shooting at you, what's happening. So even if I don't know the mechanics, because I didn't look up anything, like any of the mechanics, I didn't look up any optimization thing because I want to discover everything myself. So visually it's very intuitive to learn, right? It's pretty obvious what most things are, and then just if it's not obvious, just looking at the tooltip mostly solved, like I would say 95% of my questions, you know. Of course there's additional information that I might want to know that I don't know about, like the stat breakdowns, like how does it affect you, but it tells you right here, right? Improves healing received for willpower, blah blah blah, range damage. It's not as information dense as Path of Exile, but it doesn't need to be, you know. Like I feel like they're in the same genre, they're under the same umbrella of action RPG, but they occupy different ends of the spectrum, right? This is Diablo's supposed to be more mainstream. It's supposed to be like, you know, for people who are not hardcore gamers, right? You don't need to bust out the spreadsheet to do it. You can bust out the spreadsheet and be hella optimal and figure out the, you know, damage formulas and combat formulas and be like super optimal with like, you know, OP builds and stuff. But I mean, that's also out there for people to create content on YouTube so they can make a living, right? So, you know, for lazy people like me, if I really cared down the line to be super optimal after experimenting and doing my own discoveries and, you know, getting to the end game, then that's there. I can just watch a video and be like, all right, so like I'll try out this meta, I'll try out that meta in experience, you know. But yeah, so I think, you know, as far as my thoughts go on the game, I think that's pretty much it. I haven't been reading chat, so let me catch up and see what you guys are saying here. Hopefully that addresses your question, Hawk. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let's see. What is this? I would love your opinion about Diablo 4. Oh, for the time you played, right? I think Dark Shroud is gonna. Right. Okay, I read this stuff. Let me just skim here. I'm just worried about the end game being ultra repetitive. Yeah, I mean, you and I both, like we're concerned about the same thing, because I felt that in the past their weakness was their end game. There's nothing there, right? So it doesn't hold the interest, and it doesn't need to be. I mean, for example, like if I play like God of War, which I thoroughly enjoyed, I mean, it's a different type of game, of course. This is more like there's definitely a hamster wheel there. But the point is, I get to the end, I do what I want to do, enjoy the story, do a little bit more, do some of the challenge stuff, and then after that, I'm good with it. You know, like I'm not upset that there's not like an amazing end game keeping me grinding that game. You know, so in that sense, like you know, there's like it's like two parts of the coin where like the game design needs to be proper, and of course the expectation of the gamer going in and what they desire out of the game is also malleable. So it's not just like the game needs to come game needs to conform to me. It's not just that, right? Like I should also be able to have a malleable mindset kind of thing. But anyway, let's see. Unique items, but later into the game. Oh, there are unique items. Okay, cool. So then maybe my concern is addressed with that. There are 2-3 tiers above legendary. Okay, actually then that's awesome, because that's what I was saying. I was saying I hope that there's a separate category for uniques or something like that, because like I don't really like that this is the way this is, right? Because they did the same thing in Diablo Immortal, and Diablo Immortal, like, you know, whatever legendaries like this dropping, it didn't feel dope, right? After a while, right? It wore off, like the dopamine was gone, you know. But yeah, so in this game, legendary standard rarity. Okay, RAM will be fixed for open beta apparently. Oh, cool. Yeah, because that's something they need to fix. But again, those are technical issues. I'm not too concerned about that, because that's what I'm concerned about is like the flesh, like the bones of the game. If the bones of the game is trash, then you know, or it's not even if it's trash. It's like if I don't like it, then I don't want to invest time in it, because there's so many dope games out there that I wasn't able to play. You know, and so much to do in life that I don't want to waste time like being angry about a shitty game. I would just rather play something else. You know what I mean? Yeah, so they say starting D2 today. Hey, what's up, Proc? Hopefully you're good. Thinking just a quick run through normal mode for research. Hours later, just gonna kill countless. Countless. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Yeah, Diablo definitely has the hooks. You know, like I'm not gonna lie, man. I was like hella hooked on the beta. You know, but Blizzard does that really well. Like the beginning portions of the game, the honeymoon stage, they know how to amplify that enjoyment. They know how to like ramp it up, like you know. Like an exponential graph, but eventually they get to the point where it's end game. It's like, okay, how do they treat you? Did they just make an end game where it's just like difficult because the mobs hit you harder and they have more health, and so it's just a gear check? That's not fun. You want mechanics to change. You know what I'm saying? You want more interesting content. You just don't want it to be like, oh, they hit you harder. You just have to have better gear, but nothing else changes. Your builds are fine. You just need better gear. Like I think that's really whack, and I think that's a failure as a game, like from a game design standpoint. But I see potential here, you know? But then again, people who played closed beta for Diablo Immortal felt potential, and then they felt betrayed. And, you know, I saw those videos where essentially they're shedding tears, gamer tears, like, you know, they're broken about it, and they didn't know what to do with life. I was like, damn, son, it's a video game, just move on, you know? But they're like sitting there going like, man, it was so good in closed beta, what happened, bro? You know, I was just like, you know, I watch it, I feel bad for them, but I was like, well, what do you mean? Business happened. Capitalism happened. You know, they're trying to make the most amount of money, so shitty monetization made their way in, you know? But they better keep that shit at bay with Diablo 4, otherwise, you know. Actually, otherwise nothing, I guess. They'll still be laughing all the way to the bank, because people had a big backlash for Diablo Immortal, but it didn't matter, you know? They didn't really change anything, so, I mean, as far as I know, maybe they changed something now, but after they made all the money, you know? I'm gonna try teleport one more time, because I'm assuming the game is definitely done. That's why I can't teleport out of here. But alright, it's just gonna load. It's gonna actually do anything. Because even if they forgot about daylight savings time, it's 1 p.m. So, you know, just loading. Yeah. Alright, whatever. I'm just stuck here. Man, I can't even look at my barb or be on my main. I gotta be on this level. What is this? Level 12, like, you know. You know. But yeah, this class is cool. But yeah, hopefully that addresses everything. Well, not addresses everything, but addresses your, you know, you wanting my impression of the game. Long story short, I'm tentatively excited about the game. I'm not going to hide my excitement, because I am excited about the game. I'm definitely going to play open beta as well. Look forward to playing the Necromancer and the Werewolf. Well, Freudian slip, but the Druid. But I'm definitely going to be playing that guy, Pharaoh. It's just like, I mean, yeah, I mean, all the builds I've been doing here were nostalgic Diablo 2 builds. So, yeah, I'm going to play Druid, play Necromancer, and it's going to be dope, I hope. And I don't know, if the main game sucks, whatever, you know, I still had a good time with beta, and that's what it is, so...